DGCast Wednesday live podcast. I hope everybody's well. The basement's a little darker than normal. Don't be scared. It's not a dark podcast or a dark day or anything. This is just a new look we're going to take on for tonight's interview. So, guys, I've been following this person for a while, and I have to say she's a very interesting individual. I've been kind of looking into her backstory a little bit and some of the stuff she does on TikTok and on X and on Facebook. And it seems like she's really out there helping people with their ascension process. She is also a galactic shaman. She's a psychic medium. And even though I just said that, she's an ascension guide. Guys, I want to introduce you to Mrs. Ellen Red. Ellen, what's going on?
Hi there. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. This is a really, I've been looking forward to this interview for a long time. I know we were supposed to do this in season 1 and then things got kind of messed up, but I'm grateful that you had the time to actually sit down with me today and talk. I think this is great.
Very good. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime. So Ellen, I ask a lot of my guests this, especially my first time guests, because I think it's a very important aspect of this. I kind of call it the spiritual spiral. I don't really call it the spiritual path anymore because to me, it's kind of become a spiral. But what was your I call it your burning bush moment, or that pivotal moment in your life that kind of geared you towards the path that you're on and the realizations that you've encountered today?
Well, I always have to answer the same question that everybody asks me when they ask me this, is that I came in as an indigo soul, so I knew as a little child I was already talking to spirit guides as a very, very small child, like 2 years old, I remember. And then, of course, at age 4, I did drown in a swimming pool, and I went to the other side, and I met the angels, and I saw a lot of things there, and I was shown really a lot. And while I was on the other side, I was being resuscitated in the swimming pool, and so came back to, and so that changed that set me on the path. It was definitely divinely orchestrated, I believe, and so I was already right away on the path because I was immediately very different than everybody else, and I was raised in a religious background, and I knew that something wasn't right because I just went to heaven, and I was like, what you guys are saying isn't what I saw. So it kind of really caused that polarity in me between mysticism and religion, right?
Uh-huh.
Just causing me to have to kind of work through all that throughout my life. But then I've had a lot of other very profound experiences through my life that caused it, to catapult me into really coming through, including having 12 strands of DNA activated, and then that introduced me to my twin flame, which caused me to activate more DNA. So it's a very long story, but we can talk about as much as we can while we're here.
Yeah. Well, no, that's very interesting because that's one thing I find in common with you is I came from a heavily religious background also. My mother's side was Roman Catholic. My dad's side was Greek Orthodox. So if anybody can empathize with you there, I totally get it. The one thing that I chatted with you before the show a little bit, let's touch on that briefly now. I remember you were made a post about how you unintentionally got involved with the predator class or the elite. I know you only want to touch on it briefly. So if you don't mind, let's touch on what aspects of it that you would like to. And it's just, to me, was a phenomenally interesting story because you're not the first person I've heard who's ended up in this situation.
Yeah. I'm very connected to a lot of others who have been MK Ultra victims, and I say survivor now, but we were caught in that, and we were put through child sexual abuse and rape and torture and things like that. And so MK Ultra Monarch programming basically is, you could say, part of the Illuminati, right? They created these systems, and it's a very, very long story that I won't bore everybody with too much of the details, but I will just say that in my case, from the time I was 4 years old, I had a very busy year. I drowned, and I also got molested. And then that kind of put me into a whole nother world. And of course, later I got put into different trafficking programs. And that went on really into my 30s pretty much. And so I went through a whole lot. And when people say, oh, name names, I had somebody do that on my post that you saw, name names. Well, I've named some names, but
Yeah.
you start naming names and you're talking about certain things. You're talking literally about some of the most powerful people in the world. And it's a very difficult situation, which is one of the reasons why they've gotten away with it so much. You saw what happened to some of the people that tried to come out and talk about Epstein. One of his victims all of a sudden ended up unalived recently. And
Yep.
so it's one of those things where these types of groups of beings, it's very difficult for a victim to come through, to come out of the MK Ultra programming, which it takes decades. Most people don't come out of it, and if they do, they don't even really start to fully realize how much damage happened to their psyche until they're 40 or 50 years old. And by then, usually the program itself is designed for that person to take themselves out, or they have ways that they do that, and reasons why they do that. But anyhow, it's pretty complex. It's a very long story. It's
I
not one
understand.
that I like to go into all the dirty details of, because it's hairy, and
Yeah.
not that I'm unhealed, because I've healed from it all. But it's just that it's something I'm, maybe I'll get a book done and go into detail. But yes, I was part of the MK Ultra, and I was part of the sex trafficking with these elitist groups.
And and like I was telling you before, yeah, you are not the first person that I've talked to who's encountered this. And the one thing I do want to say is I'm glad you made it out okay.
Thank you. I was like,
I'm
it wasn't easy, because it's so easy to get addicted to drugs and to blame yourself and to want to kill yourself and all these other things. But, that's what they want you to do, and you can't. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So this actually brings me to a topic. So there's been a theory going around lately, and I want to kind of pick your brain on this just because you've kind of been involved in this. So I hear there's a type of human farming going on this planet right now. So there's this show that came out, and it's funny because a lot of these shows they they put predictive programming and all of the stuff that they're doing in there. It's called Promise Neverland, and essentially what happens is these reptilian beings are kidnapping these children and taking them to the other side of this wall that surrounds the main area where everybody lives, but then they take them to the other side of this wall, and they're basically doing human farming. Do you feel that is an actual thing going on right now? I've seen a lot of inklings that kind of point towards this, and I just want to get your opinion.
Well, I 1,000,000% know that it is, because when I came out of the programming, I had to battle intergalactic beings, interdimensional beings, including draconians, greys, reptilians, omnicron beings. There's many, many types of beings there. And so yes, they are behind it. In fact, that's one of the videos that I was getting ready to put out. This remember I told you yesterday that I was going to put out a video, is that was really, they were working behind the scenes on this, that they are who's behind the trafficking. And so whoever's making that videos, well, they're not just predictive programming, they're in plain sight telling you the truth of what's really going on. And it's really hard for humans to understand. Like, I've never seen a gray, I've never seen an alien or a green guy come flying. They don't come in that way. They're interdimensional.
Right.
It's just like a ghost. People see ghosts and some people don't. Well, they're interdimensional. They exist in the same fabric of our reality, but it's a frequency thing. And you really have to feel into your feelings in order to then have the spiritual sight to see them. And the more you do that, the more you will see them right in front of you. And also, they do possess beings. They work through other humans, and some of them are in human form. So there's a lot of variations of stuff going on. When we say the matrix, we mean the matrix, because we're talking about layer upon layer upon layer of all this different things going on. And you have to test every spirit in order to know who you're dealing with, because reality is an illusion.
I completely agree. And you actually just lended credence to something I talk about a lot. I always joke, that some of them are in human form, and I have this saying that the human is the ET angel, and the ET/angel is the human. And I myself have gotten a peek of how there are things here that are posing as human beings that are not. And it's a very so even what you just talked about, like, and I want to pick your brain on this, and I'll tell you a quick little story. So I do believe that and for a lack of better words, there's some kind of spell frequency on this reality. And one thing I've talked about a lot, you're saying I've never seen a group, people are saying I've never seen a gray alien, or I've never seen any kind of
And
extraterrestrial come out of the
that-
sky. I had the pleasure of talking with a Cherokee Native American elder one time, and him and I hit it off, and he told me this story. Maybe you can kind of resonate with it. But he found a gray alien body, a bodysuit, or what he called it, on his property in Sedona, Arizona. I know, go figure,
Mhm.
it's Sedona, right? And then he brought it back to his family. He put it in his canoe and he brought it back to his family. And he was showing them, and they still didn't believe it. They still didn't believe what was right in front of their eyes. So, what do you think? Is there some kind of spell frequency on this reality that somehow kind of dims the senses? I mean, especially the spiritual senses and the realizations that people could have, even if they're looking at the hard evidence like right in front of them.
Well, there's so much of that in so many ways, and that's why they use sonar waves, and they use, chemtrails, and they put fluoride in your water, and they do all these things to you to keep you so numb and dumb that you can't see things that are right in front of you. I mean, it's not just aliens, it's other things that people can't see that's sitting right in front of them. So, I mean, of course that is true. There's been others, like I think his name was Bill Schneider. I hope I'm doing him
Yep.
justice.
Yep. You
Rest
got it
in
right.
peace,
You got it
Bill
right.
Schneider. And he was unalived also because he worked for the government, and he had actual experience, and he had actual evidence of ships crashing and alien bodies. So they can take form in the physical. They don't just have to be interdimensional. I'm glad that you corrected me on that. But there have been some bodies that have been found here throughout the history of humanity. It's not just Bill Schneider and one other person. No, it's been written about and documented really for a long time. But then they found elongated skulls and all kinds of other types of things along the way to give us evidence. But it's also been highly oppressed,
Hmm.
so kept secret intentionally, just like they kept psychic abilities in secret. The CIA always knew that we had psychic abilities, and they actually tried to hire some of us, literally, to work for them. And some of us said, hell no, because what happens to most of them afterwards is they end up unalived because, well, they saw things that you're not supposed to see.
Oh
You
yeah.
see, and so, but they've always known that that existed. And one of the reasons why they like to try to hijack psychic beings or ascended beings, or get those ascension codes from them, is they're trying to create technology in the physical form to bypass God's technology for you to ascend. They don't want to do it God's way. They want to do it their own way and still be able to get into the God worlds. And they're not allowed to. And so that's why anybody that is an ascension teacher really has to kind of keep certain pearls, don't cast the pearls in front of swine,
Hmm.
because there is a certain, really an urgent need in certain ways to be careful with how you're saying things, because the wrong hands that get a hold of it destroy planets, literally, and have destroyed all other planets. And by the way, that's why many of us that had the higher DNA came into this plane at this time to assist this planet, because it's on the verge of annihilation, literally. So, not a fear-based thing, just a fact thing. And well,
Well, no,
yeah.
I completely. So that actually brings me to one of the next things I want to talk to you about. So I've actually heard this theory too. So I was on a podcast last week called Reality Czars, and he brought this up to me, that the reason why we are drip fed the truth, we get limited hangouts, we're not given the whole truth, because if we wake up too quickly as a collective, they will wipe the slate clean and essentially make this all start over again. I mean, what are your thoughts and opinions on that? I mean, I'm basing that off what you said about the annihilation, that these extraterrestrials or interdimensionals, whatever they are, that they they do not, or at least some of them do not want us waking up in a mass amount at a collective level, or they will do something to the planet. I mean, it brings me back to even the theory of Atlantis and things like that. I mean, what's your opinion on that theory?
Well, as far as going to the first part, in terms of them wanting us not to awaken, well, they don't want us to awaken for other reasons, but in terms of the light itself, the highest dimensional light, and the divine plan behind everything, even all that is dark, there's still a divine hand behind the scenes that is in control of all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And behind that is the fact that, truthfully, if too many souls came in right now with 12 strands of DNA activated or more, the planet would implode. It's not ready yet to take in that much light. Have you ever gone through something in your own life, in your own journey, where you really had to integrate new information? You had to really, it's like they were doing with the moving everything from 3D to, or 3G to 5G, how they had to go out through all your neighborhoods and repipe everything with new wires to get all the technology working. Well, the same thing's happening to humanity on a DNA level, and it just can't happen overnight. It's like a process that you have to integrate this new information, and you feel it stuck energy in your heart chakra, and you feel the pain of the labor pains of learning something new and birthing something new out of you that's even bigger. The world can't handle all of it at one time with every single being. Everything would go out of control. Everything would become way too chaotic. Right now we're we're rocking the boat a little, but we're okay. Things are a little steady, sort of. And so, but too much, whoo, boy, the planet would implode. So behind the scenes, from the highest perspective, that's part of the reason that it's happening in a layer by layer thing. There are souls that are on the earth right now that are not ready to fully consciously ascend with 12 strands of DNA or higher. They're just not ready yet. It's not their turn. Maybe they'll come back. Maybe they'll work from the other side on it. I don't know. It's up to them. It's between them and the divine. But that's what I've been shown. And so there's that. Now, on the other side of it, with the negative ETs and their plans behind the scenes, well, they don't want you to stay dumb. They want you unalived, because they've already taken everything on the planet, all of the minerals, all of the resources, all of the nations, all of the land, all of the food, all of the seeds, all of the homes. They're sweeping up the rest of the homes in the land now. They've already got everything, and their whole goal in the first place was to use human intelligence, sentient soul consciousness, to integrate it into AI, and then to turn AI into robots to annihilate the rest of the slaves. So there's just a handful of them to do the work for them so that they can do what they do. Okay, they don't care if they don't want to hear anymore. Okay, they already got what they needed out of you. They're users. Okay, users are losers.
I'm not totally, no, I'm totally with you. No, and that theory really interested me because I have my own thoughts on that, but it is very interesting. Based on my own experiences, I have seen that there are a lot of what I would call entities invested in what's going on here at this moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
And and this is actually something I really want to chat with you about. One of my favorite topics we're going to be bringing up here, kind of tying into what we're talking. So I'm a huge believer in ancient civilizations.
Mm-hmm.
I believe our true nature is purposefully hidden from us,
Yes.
on many levels. And I do believe, for one reason, I talk about organic technology, the lost technology that was available to us during those times, and that how that would put $7 billion industries out of business right off the bat if we started utilizing that. I mean, what is your opinion on the true history of humanity? I like to hear this story from everybody, to get different perspectives. I think, we did not originally come from here. And I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I a million percent agree. I actually just spent almost a month in Malta, which has a 7,000-year-old ancient civilization that was discovered underground. And I also visited Pompeii, which I think is 5,000 years I don't know, a few thousand year BC. Anyways, it was very interesting to visit there because you can really see the advancement of those civilizations that long ago. They were more advanced than us even then, and in lots of ways. And those are just fairly recent compared to some of them that are even far more ancient, like Atlantis and like others that haven't even been discussed. I was just looking into one of them the other day, Telos, or not Telos, it was Tolos. I don't know. I'll have to look at it and send you the name, or anyway, I don't want to do it while we're here, but it was also just recently found under the water, and it was kind of on the verge of Egypt, and so it was one of those, and it had very advanced technologies. But they've even found in some of these lost cities under the water crypts, because like the Egyptians, they bury everybody in the crypt with their car, with all their belongings, with everything. That's how they did it. And they found these buried crypts under the ocean that have technology to create electricity for helicopters, for spaceships, things like that, that were thousands and thousands of years ago. So, and that's the same technology that Nikola Tesla understood, because I believe that Nikola Tesla became illuminated in his journey. And so he accessed, through his own spiritual journey and his own DNA activations, higher consciousness, and time traveled, literally. And that's how he got the information to bring that technology into the human world. And of course they hijacked it from him, which is what the Twin Flame Universe group just did to all of the twin flames that are coming in talking about twin flames. And they came in and took the language, perverted it, contorted it, distorted it, and made millions of dollars on it, harming other human beings, because they are frauds, false prophets. So that technology that the twin flames have is also telepathy, right? That telepathy, if you had that all along, which you did, you would never need a telephone ever.
Exactly. No, I completely agree, and I do think that a lot of us are starting to understand that. I think the and one thing I've spoken with you about is it's, at least in my eyes, it's at first you awaken and then you remember, and it's like you're remembering these things about yourself throughout your genetic ancestry and your genetic ancestral DNA. And I feel personally you can just cultivate this. It's already there, and you can just become aware of it. It's almost like how there's two different camps in Kundalini yoga. One believes you need to awaken the Kundalini, and then the other camp believes the Kundalini is already there and awakened. You just have to become aware of it. And I think, that's a fairly interesting thing to touch. So, the one thing that you brought up, and this has always been a huge topic in the spiritual community, and I just want to get your opinion on it, is the twin flame aspect. I know there's a lot of people, to me, I think people in some ways can kind of obsess over it too much.
I'm so almost over teaching on it, because I've been teaching on it for almost 17 years, long before most of the people even knew what it was. And it's gotten so perverse. They don't understand the sacredness of that subject, that it's just almost like we're doing more damage by trying to explain it to the human 3D mind. That is really one of those things, like everything else, that has to be experienced, just like a Kundalini awakening. A lot of people say, oh, I felt some tingling in my back, I think I had a Kundalini activation. Well, your version of a Kundalini activation and somebody else's version is probably very different. That's the world we live in, is that so many people are vibrating in all these different stages of frequencies and different perceptions and different realities. And then at the same time, there's different dimensions. And so even with awakening, you go through an awakening, then you go through an awakening, then you go through an awakening, and then until you go through all of those stargates. And that's why we just have to do the best we can with what we're dealing with right now, because we're going through this massive transformation, and everybody's perceiving it differently and experiencing different things. And we just have to do the best we can with each other. Wow.
And I love that. I really like your positive outlook on it. It's almost like we're almost in certain wavelengths, in a type of unity in this aspect, because we're all looking for this and we're all pursuing this and cultivating this. But it's very interesting, all the different little nuances that, each individual journey really has when going through this. And but the fact that you appreciate that, you acknowledge that, and you see the beauty in it, I think that's a really great thing. I think a lot of people get very tied up in the petty, minute differences of it all. And
Yeah.
and that's something that I'm big about on this show. I think really, that's something we have to focus on, is that, we all ultimately want the same thing. We all ultimately want, the best for our consciousness, our development, our spiritual growth, and things like that, and I think really, eventually we'll get there. There's a lot of people right now who are already in what I would call 5D consciousness.
Yes. Or higher.
Yes, or higher. And so this kind of brings me to my next topic, because I've talked with you about this before, and I'm sure you've gotten some you kind of went into a little. So how manufactured this reality is. And you and I have chatted about this before. I do believe personally that this reality is highly manufactured, that these entities, whoever they are, they know the human consciousness very well. They understand the way it works, so they use fear. They use fear to manipulate and manufacture the reality that we live in. One thing that I've kind of used, I've called it the Truman Show analogy. But instead of being advertised products on our little stage, we're being advertised narratives and trains of thought. And whichever narrative that you buy into becomes your subjective reality. And if enough of the collective buys into this narrative, it will manifest itself on the collective stage. I mean, what are your opinions and thoughts about how manufactured this reality could potentially be?
Well, I mean, I agree with that. And I'll give you a little example and this is just a video that I saw, so don't quote me on this. I
Okay,
just saw
okay.
the video, and so I thought, well, that would be kind of interesting if more people went this direction, because I wonder how that would change things. I'm not saying to do it. I'm just saying, observing what the video was saying. So there was a man talking about how unfair it is that people are paying taxes and then all the money's going to Ukraine and blah, blah, blah. Everybody's always complained about taxes for a long time, right? So, but he's saying that last year, 25% less revenue got given to the IRS, meaning that enough people said, you know what? We don't like this reality anymore. We're not going to pay taxes anymore. And they lost 25%. That's a quarter of the revenue this last year that the IRS in the United States stopped receiving, because enough people, 100th monkey effect, right? Enough people said, yeah, I don't think I like this reality anymore. Let's just change it. And now, if you think about it, you got 75% of the people in the world to have the same kind of belief structure. Or again, now and I say not even a belief structure, but to realign with their divine blueprint from the source, because that was pure. We wouldn't be having these problems on earth right now if everybody were truly aligned with the source. But if enough of them were, everything would go into paradise mode.
Okay.
Okay. And that's, so is there power there? Of course there is. That's the key, is that it's about awakening the collective. And that is a big process, because I've been on this journey, awakened as a fully awakened soul, for almost 20 years now. And prior to that, I was quite highly advanced and very psychic early on as a child. So I've been along this journey for a very long time. And just in the last 15 or 20 years, I've watched the whole world change,
Oh,
literally. Because when I first went through my awakening, the only person that ever spoke about reptilians was David Icke.
mhm.
He's the only one I could ever find out there that talked about what I saw. And I was so afraid of coming out and talking about it back then, because I had a mom that was mentally ill and put in mental hospitals, and I was so sure that they were going to do that to me. But I knew what I saw, you know?
Of
And
course.
so, but from that point to now, every other person online believes in reptilians, literally.
Oh, most
A lot of,
certainly.
there's a lot of people now that are hearing about it and opening their minds.
And
So
I'm really great. It's great. It's great to sit down with another vet. I woke up back in 2008, and yeah, it's amazing. when 2020 came around, as well as everything else, I saw a lot of the things that, a lot of people have been talking about for years start to really kind of come into fruition.
Mhm.
So no, it's definitely interesting that it's been a long time for you. So you've gotten a really good objective scope on the timeline, and it's good to
I've
talk to
watched,
people like
I've
that.
worked at it and I've watched, and I've witnessed a huge transformation with humanity just in the last 10 years. And it's really nice to see. So whenever I feel like giving up hope, because there's times where I'm like, why did I agree to come back to this planet? Because I got taken off planet almost 17 years ago and given the opportunity of whether I wanted to come back or not. And I chose to come back in. I chose it consciously. Sometimes I question that decision. Like, what was I thinking? I was already home free. What was I thinking? But, then I look at it and I say, no, there's been great growth here in the last 10 years. Really, really a lot. And COVID was magnificent at wakening people up because if you weren't awake by then, and well, now you are, and a lot of them are. And I was just in the DMV yesterday with somebody, and she told me her story, and she wasn't awake before COVID, got the jab and twice, and now she's awakening. And so it's like, okay. And of course, we say awakening, we know there's lots and lots of layers. Just because you understand things about the government doesn't mean you're awakened on a deep DNA level in your soul bodies, and it doesn't mean you're a Christed avatar or any of that other stuff. But at least they're becoming awakened and their consciousness is becoming aware. So that's kind of incredible growth, because that's really why so many of us came in like we did at this time, is that we are, as a species, we are going through evolution in a matter of 50 years that would have took humanity well over 1,000 years in the past.
Oh yes,
We're speeding through evolution now. We're integrating, reintegrating. It comes back to all that bandwidth in your DNA, as we're taking in so much light. And that's why you can't push yourself too hard.
oh
It's a
absolutely.
big job we're doing.
Oh no, absolutely no, and it's very interesting. Now, I'm sure you got the phone calls too from the people in 2020 who were like, I got a couple of those phone calls, and they were like, Steve, we used to think you were really off base all of these years, but now we're not so sure you were off base. And I'm like, well, and my thing has always been, I don't want to hear I was right. I'm just happy you're on board now. That's
It's
really always been my
it's
thing.
nice to hear it. It is. And what is even nicer is that those souls are strong enough inside to acknowledge when they're wrong, because that's a big stage of evolution to grow through in your chakra system. But and it's not that we need to hear it, but it is nice. It is a little bit of a confirmation and a comfort, because I know that a lot of us, I was having a full-blown telepathic relationship with my twin flame 15 years ago, and everybody thought I was nuts. They all thought I was nuts. And now they're coming back and going, what is that? My dad, who's 80 years old, who's very religiously indoctrinated, is asking me at 80 years old what twin flames are, and he's really curious about how I have this telepathic connection and what is going on. So that's a big deal. It's just nice. So it's sure better than getting beat up and told that you're stupid and you're an idiot for so long, because it gets tiring. It gets tiring to be on the front lines and get beat up.
It does, man. It does. No, and I can completely understand and empathize with you on that. And that's why, about in 2012, 2013, I kind of threw up my arms. I was like, I'm no longer speaking upon deaf ears. I am just going to continue, because it's an energetic stone wall, when you're trying to do that. At least in my perspective. And and then I just really kind of cultivated myself from that point on, and did the internal work, and did the work that needed to be done to help bring me to where I am today. And it's very interesting. No, and there's many stages and layers to this awakening. I think the whole geopolitical thing is just the icing on the cake of what we're really dealing with. That is just what I would call the outward manifestation of it all. all, and then you kind of get down to the other layers and even to the occult aspects of this society. And one thing I definitely want to talk to you about, and this is something I'm a really huge believer in. I believe symbolism is the prime language of this reality, and that written and spoken language is secondary. How do you feel about that?
I agree with that. And it's really interesting that you brought that up because I'm getting ready to do a mystery school with people. And one of the first courses that the guides asked me to teach on people is the power of symbols for the light beings, for those that are learning to work with magic, because it actually is powerful even on an etheric level. When you start working with Merkabahs, the things that will happen to your soul are life altering, literally, because that's how powerful symbols are, because the universe is also geometric. It's also made out of sacred geometry, and so there's a lot, but symbols can also trip people up too, right? Like they can
Mhm.
actually capture, and there it's a form of an alien technology that can actually hijack your chakra system.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of deep, stuff there. But
No, that's really cool. No, I'm glad you're on that page. No, and then another thing, I'm interested. One way I describe people uh can perceive these things that are going on, and one thing I'm a huge believer on is the subtle, right? The subtle realms, and training yourself to see the subtle, because if you want to see the truth, that's where it lies. How do you feel about that? And one thing I do want to pick your brain on is training on how to teach people to perceive the subtle, because I myself, I can do it, but when it comes to formulating words to try to explain to somebody else on how to do it, I find grave difficulty in that. So maybe you can help me out with that.
well, every teacher's different, and to tell you the truth, it's a rite of passage even to learn to teach, because it's like another stage of evolution you yourself have to go through in order to teach it. You have to figure out how to take everything that you're understanding and figure out how to turn it into something manifest. It's part of the birthing process of your own soul too. So that's why every time you see a teacher, each one of them really, in essence, has very unique teaching signatures. It's like a blueprint that you're leaving behind on the earth. And there's reasons for that also, because there's soul tribes that are going to come in down the road in new incarnations that are going to be from your tribe up there, that are going to be resonating with certain things based on the teachers. So it's very unique, truthfully. But as developing it, it's like going to the gym. And I tell this to everybody that comes to me: I want to get Akashic records. Why can't I astral travel? Why can't I? Well, it's a muscle that you have to work out. You can't get a hard body by not going to the gym and sitting on your couch eating potato chips every day. You have to work it. Okay. It requires your effort daily. There's no other way. It requires devotion and commitment. And there's really just no other way. And there are stages. So, you're going to go through lots of stages, it's just like anything else. You're going on a big hike and you're getting all the way up this hill and you start complaining because you're getting tired, and the guides are like, you haven't hit the good part yet where you see anything. So a lot of people that work with me, I hear that all the time from them, is that they're really frustrated because I've done all this work for 60 years in my life. What do you mean I have more to do? And it's like, well, yeah, but you haven't got to the good part yet, like, come
Yeah.
on, just a little more, nudge, nudge, nudge. So it just depends on the person. It depends on a lot of things, but
No,
again,
no.
everybody teaches differently.
I love how you said it's like a muscle, because that is exactly like the best way to describe it. I mean, even doing, the Qigong practices and the Kundalini practices that I do, it's almost like developing. And, the one thing it's interesting is the whole root lock thing in Kundalini, because you can actually help visualize the crown chakra as you're doing the root lock. And I think that kind of like just opens that door of perception for people to be like, wow, this is actually like a real thing. My energetic system is a real thing. I have a metaphysical body, and and I'm glad you have that same perspective, because that's just always the best way that I've described it to people. It's like working out your muscles. You have to train it every day. You have to, find ways to come to your own, I call it your own subjective understanding. you know, because at least in my eyes, everybody understands in a different way. Like, you know, the way that helped me understand might not help you understand, but your own way is within you and there for you to access. So I think that's really cool. So, you know, one thing I want to talk to you about, because you're big on consciousness just like I am. I don't know if you've heard, but there's a theory in quantum physics that's been surfacing over the past 12 years, and it's called panpsychism. And what this takes into account is that consciousness is the prime fundamental of this universe. And yeah, I know. Finally, they're catching up, right? It's like it's
right. It's kind of like, hello, didn't we know this a long time ago?
but it makes me really ecstatic to know that potentially in the next however long that this could become a mainstream thought. And what that does is it's funny because it destroys the materialistic paradigm, because that makes our, by their eyes, our coincidental and meaningless existence all of a sudden become a very important one. And very important to this existence. So I mean, if this does become a mainstream theory, I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, is this going to help kind of catalyze this awakening a lot further? You know, now that we have the scientific community coming out and having to throw up their arms and actually admit this could be a thing.
I don't want to sound like a snob, but honestly, it just is a little bit boring to me, truthfully, because
Oh no, you're fine. Yeah.
for those of us that are mystics, that are truly mystics, we've always known that it was the other way around and not this way around. Like, you know, it's just like, I don't know. It's like being in a class where some kids just don't get, you got it the first 2 minutes and you're waiting and they're asking the same question over and over. And you got to sit there all the way through the class until the end. They still don't get it. And I don't mean to be mean, but that's how it feels. Because, you know, of course, everything is energy first, and it is consciousness first, and it is the fire letters behind that even. So it's kind of, you know, I guess it's cool. It will be great when science finally says yes, okay, yes, they and then we can get on the same page and be brothers and sisters again, because that will be
Yes.
fantastic. That is the good part. So I'm sorry if I'm being mean, but it just kind of feels that way. Like, come on, you know, like,
No,
what? You guys don't get it yet? Come on. Anyway,
you're not being mean at all. No. You're not being mean at all. It's all good. No, that was just something that kind of I was like, okay, I have an even more positively optimistic mindset when it comes to all of this, and that's just one thing. Some people call me wholesome. I don't know. I guess I could be a little wholesome. I don't know, and that's just, it's amazing to me how we're all perceiving this and how this is all happening at this point in time. And one of the arguments for it was funny. They had some materialists come up and go, "How does the consciousness clump together then?" And then, and then I was like,
well,
"Are
it's
you?"
kind of a good thought. It's kind of a nice thought, actually. There's nothing wrong with that thought.
No, I
Like,
totally
what
get
is
it.
it?
So, like, what? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
No, I was just saying, I could see why they would think that, and it's a good question, actually.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting. So one thing, I do want to bring up too. I think we've chatted about this before in the past. Also, is I am under the impression, or at least I'm in the school of thought, that in a lot of ways, kind of even talking back to what you said about how some souls are just not ready to wake up yet. And, this isn't their time. And, and that's why I feel in a lot of ways that the side of light has already won this. We've already won this, but because that there are a lot of entities and souls here who are in their very early stages of waking up, or in potentially not going to wake up this time around, they have to make it seem like the stage show is still going on. They have to have it all kind of continue to play out the way it is. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that in reality, it's kind of a third density consciousness to see it that way. No offense, but it's like a mentality of a human, right? The 3D human wants to see it like, okay, we're all going to awaken, we're all going to go to heaven. But from the soul world in the higher place, you know, we're looking down and we're seeing, we're remembering full blown that you're eternal, and also the process that humanity's in. It's a long-term project, and most people don't want to hear that. Okay, it's a long-term project. How many lifetimes have you incarnated on this planet? Well, most of the souls that are here have had hundreds, if not thousands of lifetimes. And you want to have it all happen in one lifetime for you. Well, for some it is. This is their graduation from samsara. Some souls are there, not very many, truthfully, but some souls are truly there and they're finishing and they're leaving. But this project of New Earth and of moving out of this old paradigm and ascending into New Earth, because it's what I was shown anyways, is that it's kind of like a snake that comes out of its skin. The old skin and the old earth is kind of falling away and the new one is birthing out, and it's a process, and you're talking about a whole entire planet and all of her inhabitants. You really think that's going to happen in 10 or 50 years?
Absolutely not.
We're getting there. We've made so much progress in 10 years, but it's a little bit of it's a process here that we have to go through, and there will probably be a few hundred more years for people to work through that. Truthfully, that's what I've been shown. And now that doesn't mean that it can't happen right away for some, and it doesn't mean also that if we do have the ability to get through to enough and they raise their frequency, that we can zip through it, because once the planet ascends, it's kind of a fast process. You get in through that. If we can birth her through the portals and through those stargates, she can zip very quickly, meaning that everybody on Earth will. But again, it's kind of one of those things where it's all in love for all beings. And if the cat isn't ready, her DNA isn't ready to fully take in what she's going to see there, you think that the creator isn't going to care that the cat needs to be processed? It's like nursing babies until they're ready to walk. You can't just shove everybody through, So that's my perspective.
I think no, that's a great perspective, and it is. It's an interesting how the one thing. I have my moments of where I do get frustrated. I know we all do, and I have my moments, but it really is kind of perfect.
Yeah,
It really is
exactly.
kind of perfect
When
the way.
you zoom out a little, you're like, well, okay, the bigger plan, it's you have to zoom out, because if you're looking at from the little 3D lens, I want it all right now, right here. Well, again, 3D ego human, that's what you're asking for. In reality, in the higher realms, you already have it all right here, right now, there too, because up there, you also already have everything divinely worked out. The light did already win there. But we're talking light years away, and that can happen in an instant when you're time travel too. But we're still integrating here on the earth. And that's the thing is, and we're talking about a whole entire group of beings that need to kind of work through it. And so, and because we're all co-creators, it could happen in 50 years if everybody jumped on board and said, let's do it. But I haven't seen that happen yet. I've been waiting anxiously for 17 years now. It hasn't happened. So it's just a patience thing. And also it's a remembering that we really do only exist in the now. And so when we're in the now, we just remember that we're always in the now. What is time really? It's not even really real.
It's
So
very, very interesting. I agree. No, time definitely. I think I've always had the theory that and this is just mine. We can talk about it for a second. Then I got another thing I want to ask you. I've always thought we have parallel timelines as opposed to not. There's really no past, present, and future. They all run coinciding with each other. What do you think about that?
and we definitely have that, and we have parallel selves, and we have parallel universes that we exist in. So, right now, all the mistakes that people are beating themselves up for down here, they're actually creating a new life somewhere else that's the opposite of the mistake they made, and they're enjoying the revelation of that. So it's way bigger than most humans have been able to take in. And that's another reason why the DNA has to activate in them in order for them to even access those parts of their own selves. It's there, it's real. Humanity is learning about it very quickly right now. And so who knows? I really hope that I live until I'm, an older woman, and then I'll take my body with me and renew it, and it'll get brand new again, right? But I really hope to get to see some more progress, because it's been awesome to watch people that told me I was nuts about draconians. I had an ex-boyfriend. He thought it was a Looney Tune. He was ready to send me to the barn. He was like, you are out of your mind. He couldn't hear me talk. And then time went on. I didn't push it on him because, I know to honor the psyche. But he's coming back now and he's full blown red pill, draconian this and reptilians and pedophiles that. And, I'm just like, yes, it's amazing to see because it's just like a shift in your consciousness. And once it happens, your whole reality will change. First, you just have to allow your mind to open up so you can perceive something different.
And I love the way you put it. It is. It's I guess the one of the best things I can say is that understanding that there are things that you have yet to become aware of, and that is kind of the best way that I put it. So one thing I want to talk about, you brought up really quickly, is the concept of the ego. Especially since you're an ascension teacher, I'm sure you work with this a lot. And this is something that we all battle with. One good analogy I really like about what we should do with the ego. We can't kill it because it's a part of us. However, Shiva wore it as an ornament around his neck. The serpent. He wore the serpent as an ornament around his neck to showcase that is what you're supposed to do with the ego. How do you feel about that? And what's your perspective on the ego and how it should be handled in this ascension process?
Well, I mean, my perspective is you have to marry it. You have to marry it to your soul. You have to integrate it into serving the higher part of you instead of serving the lower part of you. The ego only exists because it's all the dark parts of you that you've rejected from yourself anyways. When you start to marry it and you start to love even your ugly parts and your broken parts and your hurt parts and your sad parts and your angry woman parts that everybody tells you you're not supposed to have, how dare you have feminine woman codes in you that makes you angry sometimes. Well, I like that part of me. And so I married it to my soul. And therefore, I don't really care what anybody says about me. Me and my ego and my soul are all one. Married.
I love that. No, I love that because that's another really good way to put it. I mean, it is almost like a marrying process. It's like a unification. It's not that one has control over the other. It is. It's almost like one thing I've kind of called it. Because I mean, I dig the certain terms that we use, like enlightenment or ascension, but I think I call it totality is almost what I call it. Is I call it the human totality. I think it's becoming even, I guess the purest form of what we can. I mean, what do you think about that?
In terms of, I'm
Oh,
sorry,
sorry.
you're
So
gonna have to rephrase that.
yeah, no, you're okay. No worries. So what I liked what you were saying about the unification of the ego, having the marry of it, like having it married and loving all of your ugly parts. And I guess what I'm trying to say is would you feel that this is a necessary step to achieve that human totality? Because I know there's a lot of people out there who are still struggling with that self-love for themselves, and
Yeah, it's a very hard thing to get through, and again, it really just depends on how evolved that soul is in their DNA too. Because no matter how much you say the words, there's a huge shadow body behind the scenes that's carrying, and an emotional body and a physical body and you have all layers of bodies, light bodies and everything else, and there's layers there that have to also agree with the thought that you're saying, and agree with the idea that you're going to love yourself. All that stuff in the background, if you don't really have it back there, doesn't matter how much you do this. Okay,
exactly.
so that's the thing, and that's where the real work is, and that's where people get very frustrated with themselves because I think one of the biggest issues I have with people is they come in and they already want to think that they're there. Well, where is there, for one? Like, where is there? You're here now,
Exactly.
and we all are. But every now that goes on, aren't you going to be consistently evolving and consistently learning new things? And the moment that you get so sure about yourself that you can't continue to grow, I grow from people every day. every day I grow from people. I get taught things, I get reshaped, I get fine tuned. It's not that I don't have the enlightened wisdom. It's just that as a soul, we're integrating, we're expanding our souls, we're expanding our chakras, we're fine tuning it, we're reshifting it. Maybe we're going to redirect it a little. You see what I'm saying? So
Exactly.
one thing that people need to do is to always stay open, always stay open. Always, because if you close off, you also close off your chakras. It's like, why would you do that?
Exactly. No, no, and I'm with you. And that's and you explain in the fact that one thing I can appreciate it is despite how long you've been doing this, um, despite where you've come on your spiritual spiral, quote unquote, you still understand and appreciate that you can integrate this stuff. You still, you still feel that you can learn from other people. And I think that's case in point to your character there, because there's a lot of people in this community sometimes who feel like they know it all and that they are the the hierarchy or the self-proclaimed knower of everything. And that's kind of it's something I hope kind of sees its way out. But that's a great thing. So one last thing I want to touch on real quick. I know this has probably been a topic you've been asked a little bit. So what do you feel is the end game for the ET agenda coming from the side of the governments? I know, just like we probably share this view that it's not the real thing, and they're using it as a narrative or a story or a concoction. And I've even heard stories that if they were to attempt to do something like this, that the real ones would come and make it like almost like a fireworks show of some kind. What do you think is the ultimate, I guess you could say, reason the U.S. government is starting to unleash the UFO files, starting to kind of bring it to the mainstream public eye, that this could potentially be a thing? Do you think that it could be altruistic in nature, or do you think there's something else behind it, that they're trying to sway the public opinion about something in a certain way?
Well, I have seen timelines in the higher realms of that fireworks show that you're talking about with nukes, right? And I've seen the whole entire planet explode with that, and they go underground and live underground, and then they get to do their little stuff with the kids and everything that they're doing down there. Their hybridization programs, and they're taking eggs from people and remaking babies and things like that. That is a timeline in the cosmos, but that's exactly what the Guardians came in to rescue. Now, how it's really going to unfold, it can go a few ways. Maybe it won't go that way, and maybe we'll just blink and dematerialize and rematerialize onto New Earth. That could happen. Blink, and you're on New Earth as a collective, those that are ascending, because it's groups, right, that are ascending together. And so there's that. It could also go another way, where enough beings go in and start arresting people, and military gets involved, and people actually do just have enough of it and insist on getting the bad guy. But the problem is that, well, who's the bad guy? Well, there's lots of them, and they're all infiltrated all over the world, and it's a very complex situation. So it could go that way, it could go that way, and it also could go, well, one by one we test the souls, one by one we keep working on the souls. It's really neither here nor there. I think it's going to be up to the human collective themselves to determine how that's going to go. Because again, as you were talking about before with the groupthink thing, when enough group beings move their energy in one direction, well, that's where it's going.
Absolutely.
So I don't have a final answer on that. I've seen multiple timelines in other realities, but I don't have the final answer right now, because I don't think that we've reached that as a collective yet either. When it's time, they'll show me.
That's right. And you know what? I'd be very interested to hear any developments on that. I think
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a big thing, because a lot of people in the awakened community, they started to get a little excited when these revelations started coming out, because it was like, oh wow, like finally. But if there's one thing I've at least seen on my end, anytime it comes from I guess you could say, source of authority, in that aspect, there's at least some kind of a narrative behind it that they could potentially be trying
Yeah.
to push. So, but
Yeah. I'm happy to see Tucker Carlson coming out and doing some of the things that he's doing because of his audience, because it's a big move in penetrating the collective consciousness and really getting the normies, as we would call them, to catch up to the situation here. But at the same time, it's almost, I don't know if it's insulting to the true way showers, or if there's an energy of it just being a little unauthentic. Right? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yep, I get exactly what you're saying.
And so I'm grateful for it. It's a good thing, but it does kind of feel like, what's he really up? Why did he just flip the script like that? He saw that everything was going overboard and he had to jump ship before it was too late. I don't know. I'm not judging him. I'm just saying it's just an energy there that I'm kind of trying to fine tune myself. I will say this, that I don't know if you saw the video that I did a couple months ago with the spider beings.
I was checking out a couple of your videos as we've been talking. I did not get to that one though. If you want to elaborate on it lightly, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, only because it was a very powerful, they made it very clear to me that they wanted me to tell people about it. Now, what it means, I'm not 100% sure, and I don't know if it's, appropriate even to say, but so I did get a download very clearly a couple months ago of these type of beings. These spider beings are a specific type of ET being, and they are nefarious in general. And so what they showed me is and this is all they told me, is the spider's nest is hatching. And they showed me like a grid around the earth. We already have grids, right? We have grids around the earth, and we have light worker grids, and we have other grids where they're trying to oppress the planet itself. And so we got the negative ET grid and the light worker grid, and we're trying to get it balanced again so we can zip out of here. But they're showing me that these beings are ready to hatch. Spider's nest is hatching. So I think that that's very much connected to what we're seeing in the borders and things like that, people are coming in and things like that. And I think it's also very much connected to, again, the child trafficking situation, because at the core of everything, that's a big part of really what's feeding the beast system. The beast system is being fed by the most sacred fluid within those children, right? And so that's a big thing, but that's what they're showing. So what I understood from that is that this year we would be seeing a lot of nefarious things, a lot of trickery, a lot of chaos, that we call them monsters of chaos. We'll see a lot of things like that unfolding. And I don't mean to say that to scare anybody, because there's really nothing to be afraid of. Honestly, they're so desperate at this point in time. They're so ridiculously desperate that everything they do anymore is almost a joke, because it's like you can just predict it and you can just see exactly what it is. Like, are you guys that pathetic? But they're so desperate to hold on to this false power that they have, that you have to expect some fireworks here of a different form first, okay? Because they're gonna try every dumb little thing that they can, and maybe by then maybe they'll bust themselves. These people with big fat reptilian brains and egos, they're too dumb. They just always get in their way, is what they do. They think they're outsmarting people, but really, when you start to understand what we're dealing with, they actually always out themselves, and they always get in their way. And so I think we're at this point now where we're starting to get ahead of them in this game. And that's really, I think, what we need if we're going to restore everything on the earth the right way. And I think we're getting so close. We have worked so hard for so many years now. It's getting close. It's some good stuff's happening.
Oh, I would completely agree, and I'm with you on them. They're getting sloppy, or they're trolling us. It's one of the two, and that's one thing I say, because I remember back in 2008 to 2012, like it was there, but you had to really know what you were looking for and understand what you were looking for. And then I've noticed within the past, like just even the past 5 years, it has just become, like I said, they're either getting really sloppy or they're trolling us. That's the two things I came up with on that, because even the symbolism that they're letting slip and they're making very blatant right now also, a lot of people are starting to pick up on that. And I think it's almost kind of like, its spiritual counterpart of this awareness is digging itself into the collective. It's like kind of slowly like wedging itself in, and excuse me, people are starting to pick up on it more. Like excuse me, I don't like the term NPC. I know people use normie, I like Dolores Cannon's term, backdrop people, when it kind of comes to this. But even they are starting to kind of, interestingly enough, become aware of some of the things that are going on. So
Yeah, it's
I,
neat to see.
I'm with you. It's going to be really interesting. So Ellen, before we close out today, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you? I know you're on TikTok, but if you mind telling everybody else where they can find you so they can come check you out and possibly get to know you a little bit more.
Okay. Well, you can just go to ellenred.com, just like the name spelled there, ELLENREDD.com. And on the website is all of my links to PayPal, or I'm sorry, to YouTube, to TikTok, to Facebook, to PayPal, to wherever else you want to go. We do have a Patreon community. We have mystery school teachings and things like that we're doing this year. So Psychic Ellen Red on Facebook is a good one because I do a lot there. So Twin Flame Initiates is one of my groups and pages. So you can find me all over, but go, the website's the best way to go.
I like it. I like it. No, and you want to know what? I'm really grateful for you for coming on tonight. I think this is a really awesome discussion. Potentially down the road, I would like to have a round 2 with you if you would be more than willing to hop on. And I got to say, it's really nice when I get to sit down with somebody who has been in that long scope. Because I'm glad so many people are on board, but just kind of going over the past like only 4 years is just really a fraction of kind of everything that's kind of like played into this. So
yeah, I was gonna say back in the 08 when all that financial stuff was happening, I was aware of what they were doing. They were really driving that market, and that housing market crash then is what they stole from us to use to pump in right now to steal the land back. So it is, the whole thing was planned out for so long. It's very, very, very tiring, but we're getting there, and we cannot give up now. We can't. We're like on this turning point. Gotta push.
Well, so I've actually coined a new saying for the outro of the show. In the beginning it was set the captives free, but none of us are really captives. We've only believed our chains were locked, and we've only believed the cell door was locked, and it's never been. But now the outro saying is 3 eyes open, no fear. So let's do that for
right. Good one. Okay, very good.
So say it with me real quick, Ellen. 3 eyes open, no fear.
3 eyes open and no fear.
All righty, guys. Ellen, if you just want to hang out for a quick sec, guys, thank you so much for joining me for another BG Cast Wednesday live podcast. Thank you so much, Miss Ellen Red, for taking time to sit down with me. This has been one for the books, everybody. I will be back next week. I will let you guys know what the topic is. And other than that, I wish all of you a very amazing night. And thank you again for joining us here on BG Cast Wednesday live podcast, guys. Take care and have a good night, everybody.